Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today we gotta talk about this woke, insane, inclusion-based policy that has come out of the state of California in their public education system that essentially seeks to deny the realities that being handicapped is actually a disadvantage and include these people in all types of ceremonies in order to make them feel better, and ultimately the result of this is that it costs them their ability to get benefits for their disability, and now you have a bunch of disabled students who are in fear of becoming homeless because they have no path forward, because their own high school says, no, they're actually a legitimate, straight-up, regular student because we gave them a diploma, but they can't do anything like go to university. It's absolutely tragic. It is diversity and inclusion gone wrong in the worst way, and that's what we gotta talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
Well, you might have heard stories of star athletes struggling to read in high school, but getting passed on to college anyway with diplomas. Now, some special education students say it's happening to them, only they don't want those diplomas.
They tell investigative reporter Candace Wynn the diplomas and a new push for inclusion is leaving them behind.
What an opening for a local news segment. Again, this is something that is very unusual to hear from the mainstream media, although this is local news media, and that is this idea of inclusion is actually negatively impacting disabled people, but the facts are what they are, and this is 100% the case. In the story that they're going to present to you, they're going to show you a learning disabled child,
Ibrahim.
For most students, a high school diploma is a step into their future. But Ibrahim Bari says his diploma from San Jose's Lee High School stopped his future in its tracks.
Thinking what I'm going to do for my life.
Ibrahim is hard of hearing and diagnosed with a specific learning disability according to his Individual Education Plan, or IEP.
who was on a separate program with separate standards based on his disability, which is perfectly fine in these particular cases. However, the school decided that they were going to give him a regular ordinary high school diploma so that he would feel better, rather than the certificate of completion for his educational objectives, which is what we set aside for disabled kids. And the result of this is that now he is being denied disabled benefits because it turns out one of the thresholds for some benefits is whether or not you can complete high school. Don't believe me? Let's hear it from the kid and his mother himself.
An IEP is a legal document a school follows, so a student with disabilities receives personalized education.
Today, people are graduate. They call my mom.
She's like, oh, I have bad news. Even he's not getting a certificate of completion, he's getting a diploma.
A certificate of completion is something a student gets if he finishes high school but doesn't meet all the requirements to graduate. Ibrahim and his mother were expecting that certificate so he could attend vocational school. His dream is to work with automobiles, he says. But according to this letter, the diploma meant Ibrahim is now no longer eligible for those special education services through the district or county.
I was sad because if I don't go to the adult school program, what am I going to do for my future?
So I have to be perfectly honest with everybody out there in the audience. When I first heard this story, when I first heard that explanation that he would no longer be eligible for this vocational training and all these other things that are paid for by the county, I thought that possibly this was kind of a manipulative move as an end around by said county in order to avoid paying for the services in which disabled students are entitled to. But it turns out an article from 2022, which by the way, I was inspired to look for based on the local news presenter opening with a blaming of inclusion as responsible for this result, actually does outline that this is a statewide inclusion-based program. And by the way, it is not limited to the state of California. Other states in the union have similar programs because for some reason we can't pretend that handicapped kids are disadvantaged, that disabled kids have disabilities. And this is also reflected in the language because we no longer call them handicapped, disabled, or even special needs. Now the proper politically correct term is special abilities. So essentially, our terminology refers to them like they're X-Men, even though obviously they're anything but mutants with special powers. They're people with disabilities. We can acknowledge the fact that they have limitations. It doesn't devalue them as humans at all. But for whatever reason, the same idiots who like to do language policing are also handing them out diplomas haphazardly based on this idea that it's just so unfair that kids who don't meet the requirements to graduate high school don't get to graduate high school, which again would call into question why we even have those requirements. But don't worry, California has a great answer, and this article provides an excellent explanation of the nonsense that they're going through. So this article says a new pathway to a diploma opens doors for students with disabilities, and it profiles Megan Glenn's son Liam, who started playing piano at age 4 with perfect pitch. So this is somebody with a rare savant condition, and the mother was quite upset when she discovered that he is not being prepared for college or a career like other students, and because he doesn't have a diploma, just about every job is off limits to him except for maybe being a Walmart greeter. He doesn't have options like other students, and that is upsetting for all of us. However, under a new program funded by the state budget, students like Liam who have significant cognitive disabilities would be able to earn high school diplomas based on the state's alternative achievement standards and coursework tailored to their abilities. Potentially 80,000 students, 10% of the overall students enrolled in special education in California, would benefit, it should be in quotes right there, from this new pathway. Now, this is one of the main problems, by the way, with mistaking an exception for the rule. This kid may very well have perfect pitch. This kid may very well be a savant with excellent piano skills, and thus his dream of being a music teacher's aide in a public school should be achievable to him, despite the fact that there is no direct path for him currently under the previous system. However, changing a rule based on savantism, which again is extraordinarily rare, should have obviously been viewed as something incredibly questionable at the time, but instead all these people obsessed with inclusion and obsessed with, oh, these guys need the same opportunity to go to college and then fail out of college that every other student has, despite the fact that they're clearly and obviously disabled and they would not be able to function in those settings. Oh, so we gotta go with this because look at this one kid who is a savant. And again, I will grant that that kid's talented, and I will grant that maybe we should make some kind of alternative mechanism for him to be that teacher's aide without getting the university requirements based on his unique abilities. That kid actually has special abilities, but these other kids are 100% disabled. Let's be clear about that.
College isn't an option, he says. Even though school officials wrote that he earned his diploma, there's a problem. He struggles with basic reading.
I don't understand the basic of the work.
The system failed him. How can an 18-year-old read at a second grade level?
And how can a high school student who only reads at a second grade level have a transcript that's filled with A's and B's?
We really failed him.
This was one of Ibrahim's teachers. She asked to remain anonymous to avoid retaliation.
Having worked with him, I know that. He was reading at second, third grade level.
According to the county's letter, school officials decided to issue Ibrahim's diploma based on his IEP documents, assessment reports, and other factors.
Now look, a lot of these questions that the local news is asking make a lot more sense when you understand that there was a state program in 2022 that adjusted the standards for grading for these kids based on them achieving their own things in their IEP rather than meeting the state standards. So this kid can barely read 2 sentences. Again, I'm not trying to make fun of him or anything, and yet he is graduating with A's and B's, and specifically in literature. And by the way, the math scores are also the same. He is getting A's and B's in different categories like algebra that are well above his pay grade in terms of mathematics, and this is all being done based on the idea that it's so beautiful for him to walk across the aisle and get his high school diploma.
With his mother's permission, we shared those documents with 2 special ed advocates who don't know Ibrahim. They say they found red flags.
He was indicated to have passed Algebra 1, but when looking at the assessment results, it looks like he was only testing around a 4th grade level at most for math.
Advocates Taylor Cohn and Alicia Tucker say school administrators seem to be looking mainly at Ibrahim's transcript, not at Ibrahim.
When you see a transcript, you see the name of a class and a letter grade. You do not see anything additional like modifications happening, which are noted on the IEP.
With an IEP, Cohn and Tucker say classes are adjusted. Ibrahim's baseline was different from other students. Let's say earning an A in English typically means being able to read a novel. For Ibrahim, a teacher is directed by the IEP to pass him if he meets his own individualized baseline.
His goal may be just to write two sentences towards a topic.
Regardless of the fact that obtaining that high school diploma cuts off a bunch of different opportunities for him, and now you have a kid that is afraid of becoming homeless because guess what? He can't go to university. They can't afford a regular vocational school for him. He can't really function in a regular vocational school. So now he's afraid of being homeless when his mom dies, and this is just a ridiculously sad burden to place on this individual just because it makes some people in the state capital feel better about the disabled because, oh, we're pretending that they're perfectly fine, that they don't have any issues, and we pass a law or an ordinance or a program based on a savant, which is a very rare case, and it just seems so sweet at the time, even though it's anything but. It's honestly cruel.
That's why Ibrahim says he's speaking out.
I would like them to be supported them, treated them, healthy them, no matter what, so they don't struggle in the real life. Because if they do, they will be the same thing. I'm homeless.
Is that your biggest fear?
Yeah.
Look, I'm not against the modified lesson plans for these disabled kids, especially when you have an alternative system where essentially they get approved for completing their IEP, because it is a way to tailor education to these individual kids and track their progress and make sure that school officials are actually helping them become as high functioning as they can actually be. However, when this becomes a substitute for regular grades and regular graduation requirements, and this leads to all these downstream negative consequences, this is where I draw the line. And again, it's not on the IEP or anything of the sort. It is on the woke officials who pass into law this ridiculous policy that doesn't help any of these disabled kids. And I will emphasize that our original article talked about how this was going to protect and assist nearly 80,000 kids. And while a high school graduation ceremony might be really nice for the parents, I'm sure many of them, when they realize the consequences of getting that diploma, would not trade their child's future, their child being able to function in some ways, for said diploma.
We reached out to school leaders. The Santa Clara County Office of Education declined an interview, saying federal law restricts their ability to disclose specific details about any student's educational experiences or conversations related to their education.
And he's regressing in social skills.
For 6 months now, Ibrahim's been at home. No vocational school, no training to be a mechanic. He wrote this letter to school officials.
Every time I see a school bus on my street, it makes me depressed. Why do I have to be in bed for education? Do I not do that one?
Now look, this is just sad for me to see, and for those of you who are unaware, what ends up happening after disabled kids graduate from high school or actually reach the age of 18 is that they end up moving on to another educational program where they get to hang out with other people, they get to develop those social skills, and obviously this kid is feeling the emotional trauma of being trapped at home, and the mother has to take care of him all the time, which is going to lead to negative consequences for her. All on top of that, this is at the same time while his benefits are being reduced, because it turns out one of the thresholds that we use to determine mental disability or mental deficiency is whether or not somebody can complete high school or they get this certificate of completion. This is absolutely crucial for us to be able to assess who gets certain fundings and who gets to go to certain programs versus who doesn't, who can function normally, and this has been stripped away all in the name of inclusion. And now we're in this very odd situation where the same left wing that tells you that it's absolutely important to see disability just like it's important to see color, just like it's important to see sex, have instituted a policy that doesn't actually take into account disability, which would be first on the list of things that you would want to examine based on the idea that they think this will make the disabled kid and the parents feel better. I don't know if this counts as irony, but the one time the left could have made a justification for seeing innate differences as something that matters in terms of policy, they seem to have failed in that regard, and I think it is one of the more absurd policies that you can possibly have, and obviously has had very negative consequences for this kid, and it's sad to see this guy write letters letters to the school talking about how sad he is when he sees other children get on a school bus. But again, this is just one case among potentially 80,000 students who could be afflicted by the same policy, again, which was engineered for the exception, not the rule. Hey guys, Editing Sean here, and while I'm going over this footage and putting together this video, I finally figured out what has bothered me so much about this particular story, and that is essentially pretending that this kid can do far more than he's capable of doing is actually limiting what he can actually do. It's limiting what he can actually achieve, and that is a cruelty I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. If you guys are not aware, my wife's sister actually has a disability. She is in these programs like this, and if I found out that she was denied or restricted from being able to learn more and become more functional because some idiots in the state capitol decided that it would make everybody feel better to pretend that she's way more capable than she is, then I would be ripping my hair out. I would be pissed off, and I feel the same way about this particular story, and it just bothers me tremendously, and I hope you guys understand the weight of these kind of situations and how they impact the families and these kids themselves. Now look, I've given you the parameters of this story. I will link the local news segment and the article that praises this policy in the description of this video so you can check it out for yourself, but I want to know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. As usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the absolute madness of California's woke policies. Till next time.